Omnibus Prelude, the base things in life. Have you ever experienced something in your life that you knew deep inside was really good? Maybe it was a heart-to-heart conversation or an unusual shared experience with a friend in which you were drawn closer together and experienced true friendship, or the love of your parents showed you through a real sacrifice on their part, or maybe the first time you visited the ocean or mountains and experienced the majestic beauty of God's creation. I still have vivid memories of goodness from the time my dad took me to see the first Major League Baseball game at Connie Mick Stadium in Philadelphia. I was 8 years old and loved playing baseball and following the Phillies baseball team. I'll never forget when I first caught sight of the field as we walked down to our seats along the bird base line. It was almost perfect baseball field I had ever seen, a shining emerald green sea of perfectly cut grass glistening in the sunlight, exquisitely offset by the taupe brown geometry diamond and bounded by the straightest brilliantly white foul lines and batters box in the universe. Out on the field, miling round the third base dugout were the players in bright white and red pinstripe uniforms on the right, red Phillies go across their chests. Across the way there were opposing players from Los Angeles wearing their classic Dodger blue and grey uniforms. This Eden-like field of colour was surrounded by what, to my young eyes, were large yet cosy double-deck stands on 3 sides. Hovering over the right field was a monstrous steel wall over 3 stories tall, and a right centre field was the largest scoreboard in the world. At least it seemed that way to me. As my dad and I took our seats, the crowd was buzzing and the smell of fresh mown grass mixed delightfully with the aroma from Carnival Boardwalk fare of hot dogs, popcorn and cotton candy. I was so excited I felt my heart was going to thump out of my chest. The whole magnificent scene was covered by a cloudless, perfectly blue summer sky. To me this was the paradise and the Garden of Eden all rolled up into one. It was good. Though, of course, there was much that day that was far from perfect, as I know. Some stands were very old and practically collapsing. The players were not perfect, but very much sinners like you and I. The management was greedy and inept, and no doubt many of the fans in the stands had plenty of problems of their own. God had graciously kept those things from my sight in order to grant me a true taste of the good and a small foretaste of his overflowing goodness that awaits all his faithful servants when he completes the redemption of the world in fullness of time. The Base Things in Life is a modern fictional Socratic dialogue about good things. More specifically, it addresses the basic question about what is the good life, and a series of instructive, interesting, and sometimes amusing dialogues. A comeback to life, Socrates engages several characters afflicted with the fictional Desperate State University, including Peter Pragma and Felicia Flake, in discussions about the modern understanding of the good life and the role that money, power, pleasure, and success and truth play in achieving it. Along the way, Socrates addresses real-life questions about the purpose and goal of education, choosing a career, knowing ourselves and God, the meaning of success and doing good, the relationship of drugs, sex, and music to power, pleasure, and truth. In the final chapter, Socrates conducts an Oxford tutorial in which he refutes Felicia Flake's argument that all values are subjective, and he defends the existence and necessity of objective values. General information, author and context. The author of The Best Things in Life is philosophy professor Peter Kreeft, a prolific writer of a popular apologetics book from the Christian natural law point of view, including The Best Things in Life, The Unaborted Socrates, and How to Win a Culture War, a Christian battle plan for society in crisis. A natural law approach assumes that, by using their natural God-given reasoning skills like all people, whether or not they submit to God will agree on what is right and wrong in life. We will see later why this approach poses biblical problems. Kreeft's alter ego in the dialogues on the famous Greek philosopher Socrates, whom the author brings back to life in an effort to straighten out some fuzzy thinking, modern college characters. The real Socrates, you will remember, was an Athenian galley philosopher who got himself in trouble with the city's leaders by being a general busybody and hanging out with notorious anti-democrats, including relatives of his famous student Plato. Constantly questioning and revealing the logical flaws in the views of the city leaders, as well as for other philosophers, eventually led to charges of impiety, failing to honor the traditional Greek gods, and corruption of the youth, teaching them his philosophy. The charges struck, and he was eventually condemned to death. Refusing to accept exile, he committed suicide by drinking poison. Plato idealized his life, trial, and death in The Apology, Crito and Phaedo. Socrates is best known for his moral philosophy and the doctrine expressed in his famous Socratic paradox, no one does wrong voluntarily. In other words, Socrates believed that wrongdoing was due to a lack of knowledge rather than sin, a notion that we Christians know to be wrong. Significance. The best things in life is entering an example of analyzing modern and moral lifestyle. This is in the classic form of a Socratic dialogue. Socratic dialogues were first made famous by Plato's writings that claim to a document of Socrates' actual dialogue as well as his trial. Socratic dialogues uses a question and answer format to explore and logically evaluate many types of issues. In education, the Socratic method has been used for generations, and for many years it was virtually the exclusive form of an instruction in American law schools. In essence, the Socratic method is a form of cross-examination in which basic assumptions and positions on issues are probed and challenged by logical and leading questions. This technique is very effective in finding inconsistencies, contradictions, and arbitrariness in the way we think about issues and problems. It is much less effective in positively demonstrating a current worldview. The best things in life also reveals the strength and weakness of what is known as the natural law, approach to ethics and apologetics, companioned by, among others, Plato, Aristotle, and Thomas Aquinas. Natural law assumes that there is a universal agreement about basic mortality that all people, regardless of faith or culture, can know through natural human reason. As we shall see, this view conflicts with certain key biblical truths about the nature of man and his reasoning capabilities. The strength of Creeve's approach to this use of logic is to question the assumptions of modern thinking about important ethical issues such as money, power, and pleasure. Requesting his dialogue partners to give coherent questions for their particular views exposes the faulty assumptions behind those views, forcing partners either to find alternative reasons or abandon their views altogether. Unfortunately, Creeve's method is undermined by the book Man-Centered rather than God-Centered, approaching to ethics that individually reinforces the unbiblical notion that we can find the truth about right or wrong by our own human reasoning apart from God. The Bible tells us that this is impossible because all sinners suppress truth and unrighteousness, which makes their thinking about things like ethics distorted and ultimately futile. Romans 1. God has also wonderfully made us for himself that we cannot even think rightly about ourselves, about God, or about his world without being in a relationship with him. As a result, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, Proverbs 1 verse 7, not the end goal of our reasoning process. Only with renewed minds transformed by God can we know what truly is good. Romans 12 verse 2. The best things in life never reveals this truth, but instead implies that we can come to know the truth about these important issues through our own reasoning without a mind renewed by God. Main characters. The main character is, of course, back form of the dead, Socrates, who claims he must be a seeker of knowledge for knowledge's sake, and generally represents the view of the author in the book's dialogues. Socrates is intent on helping people find truth through sound and logical reasoning. He clearly believes correctly that much modern thinking about the truth and morality is neither sound nor logical. Peter Pragma is the first of Socrates' two main dialogue partners. He's a typical modern American college student trying to figure out what course of study he should choose as a major. He has not thought deeply about any of the issues Socrates brings up and is mainly concerned about getting a job in which he can earn a lot of money to attain his vision of the good life, material comfort. Felicia Flake is a student who seeks immediate happiness and fulfillment through experiences with drugs, sex, music, and political causes. She believes that whatever makes you feel happy at the moment must be good and that there are no objective values that are true for everyone. Summary and setting. The best things in life is divided into a series of 3 dialogues. In the first series, chapter 1 to 6, Socrates meets Peter Pragma, who is studying for an exam on the campus of Desperate State. Socrates engages Peter in a conversation, in which Peter is gradually and reluctantly drawn into examining his goals and motives for going to school, choosing a career, and considering what the good life really is. The second series of dialogues, chapters 7 to 11, stars Socrates and Felicia Flake, who discuss the use of drugs, rock music, sex, love, feminism, and the aesthetics of communism and capitalism. The final dialogue, the interlogue, and chapter 12 is an Oxford tutorial in which Socrates helps Felicia understand the reality and necessity of objective values, value which underline the specific ethical issues addressed in the previous dialogues.